I went to Mr. Tata's office and I told his secretary, Sheila Shastri, that I'd like to meet with him. She says, "Who are you?"
You were sent to the US
Yes.
by Mr. Ratan Tata. So would you like to speak a little bit about that?
The Quantel CEO had met Mr. Tata and they had agreed that we could try and find out if there was a way in which we could work together. At that time, our chairperson was Mr. Ratan Tata. He had just come back from the US and this was actually one of his first assignments. I suddenly got a message from his office saying, "Mr. Tata wants you to go to Jamshedpur. There's a lot of fires burning there and you need to go there and fix those problems."
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of the Chai Pe Career podcast, and I'm your host Shri Rupa Chaudhary. I'm a serial entrepreneur in the legal and wellness space, and today with us here today is a very illustrious leader from the technology space. He is none other than Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik, who was the former chairperson of Microsoft India and the former managing director of Oracle and Sun Microsystems India. He's also been on the board of multiple companies such as State Bank of India, Unity Small Finance Bank and others. And with an illustrious career spanning over so many years, we are so grateful that he's taken the time out to tell us about the future of work and career building for Gen Z and millennials. Thank you so much, sir, for making time to do this podcast here today with us.
No, it's my pleasure to be here and thank you for that introduction.
Sir, so let's go back in time and let's talk about your growing up and where did you do your schooling and college from?
So, I was born in Calcutta and my father was with the Indian Air Force. So we've actually traveled all over India. When I was 5 years old, my father got transferred to London. He was the deputy air attaché and we were there for about 5 years. So actually my first remembrances as a child actually starts from London. So I did my early schooling there, and then after we got transferred back, I spent 2 years in Delhi, 2 years in Calcutta, 2 years in Mumbai before I finally finished my schooling. I finished my schooling in 1966 and then I joined IIT Kanpur in 67. I graduated in 72 and ever since 72 I've actually been working.
Oh, wow. So that's been a pretty long career. And where did you start your first job?
So my first job was with a company called DCM as a management trainee. I joined them in 1972 and I was with them for about 3 years as 1975. And I still firmly believe that the 3-year stint I had in DCM is what set the foundation for my future success.
Oh, how lovely. And post that, you've been in multiple other companies.
That's
so if
correct.
you could just quickly run us through a few of those roles as well.
Sure. So in 75, I moved to Bombay and I joined Nelco, which is a Tata company, as a product manager. At that time, our chairperson was Mr. Ratan Tata. He had just come back from the US and this was actually one of his first assignments. So I had the opportunity to work very closely with him for the next 10 years. I was with them till 1985. I became the divisional manager for the business systems division. And then from there, I moved to Blue Star, where I was the general manager sales for the Hewlett Packard division. HP at that point of time was a multinational. It had a test and measurement instrument business, plus it had a computer business. And I was responsible for the sales of their product, but through their distributor, Blue Star. At the time, we also opened the HP India office and transitioned most of the distribution people and the sales people, marketing people into the new organization. That's the time when digital equipment came to India and formed a joint venture with Hinditron. And this was established in Bangalore. So in 1989, I moved to Bangalore as the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Digital Equipment Corporation. And I was with them for close to about nearly 10 years. The last part of my stint was actually in Singapore.
Right. So you started your career very early on in the Tata Group, which is known to be one of the best places for a youngster to really develop, their talents and really find their feet. So, any memories from that stint? Did you get to interact with Mr. Ratan Tata at all?
Oh, yes, I actually made it a point to be noticed by Mr. Tata. In fact, I'd like to share this story with a lot of people who've worked for me. Is that after I got the job and after I had joined, on the first week itself, I went to Mr. Tata's office and I told his secretary, Sheila Shastri, that I'd like to meet with him. She says, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm just joined the company and I would like to talk to him and understand his expectations as to, how I can be successful in the company." And surprisingly, I mean, I was just, really raw. I mean, I must have been in my early 20s. And he gave me the opportunity and I spent an hour. At the end of that hour, I was so, excited with, the fact that I got a chance to spend time with him. And I got up and I told him, "Sir, you will be hearing about me within the next 12 months. And as luck would have it, within the next 3 months, I suddenly got a message from his office saying, "Mr. Tata wants you to go to Jamshedpur. There's a lot of fires burning there and you need to go there and fix those problems. And he'll meet you in a couple of days and give you a briefing." That's how I started my career.
Wow. So, looks like both of you impressed each other, which is why you were sent to Jamshedpur. And, before the camera started rolling, you also told us about you were sent to the US.
Yes.
By Mr. Ratan Tata. So, would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Yes, so I had a very successful career in Nelco. I was running sales for the Eastern region, troubleshooter for Mr. Tata in Jamshedpur, lots of stories there. And all the, those famous personalities who used to run Jamshedpur and Tata Steel, Tata Motors, TRF, etc. Then I became a product manager for the one of the systems division. And then we decided to get into the business of computers. That was a completely different environment in those days, computers, because they were all homemade. And besides Nelco, there used to be companies called ORG, Wipro, HCL, who were all in the same business. So I joined as the head of sales for the business systems division, but within a couple of years, I became the overall head. And we did manufacturing. We also came out with a whole new range of computer platforms and systems and software. And one of the product lines which we created was in collaboration with a company called Quantel in the US. And the Quantel CEO had met Mr. Tata, and they had agreed that we could try and find out if there was a way in which we could work together. So I still remember, I must have been, either 30s or in my early 20s. And Mr. Tata called me to Bombay House and he says that, "Look, I want you to go to the US and I need you to seal the deal and sign a contract with these guys so that we can be partners." So I said, "What's my brief?" He says, "Your brief is very simple, just 3 things. Number 1 is that you have to make sure that whatever we do is as per the laws of the country. Number 2 is that both sides must make money. And number 3 is that what product or technology we come out with must be number 1 in the marketplace." That's all the brief he gave me. And that's the kind of faith he used to give his managers, his senior managers.
Wow. So, obviously in the aftermath of him passing away, this is a very emotional, moment for us to kind of bring back his stories to life. So, Mr. Pramanik, let's also talk a little bit about, you obviously progressed very well in your career overall, and you eventually went on to become the managing director of several large corporations. What do you think set you apart from your colleagues at that time? Because there are many people who graduate from the IITs even, or very good institutions, or who join these companies. Was it that you worked harder than the others? Or is there something else that you feel that you did at that time which worked for you in your favor?
Yeah, it's, as you progress in your career, nothing ever goes as you planned. And therefore, I think the most important lesson I learned is that when the right opportunity comes, don't be afraid to seize it. So I was in DCM, management training. At that point of time, it was the best management training scheme in the country, the highest paid. But I decided to switch over to Nelco, which was a relatively unknown company, because of the challenge. And I took it fearlessly. I mean, I didn't have to even think twice. I just went ahead and did that. And that also was the best thing I could have done as from a career perspective. So that's one lesson, that when the opportunity comes, boldly go. I think we all make plans as to what we want to do, what we would be, what we think would make us successful. Whether should we do it for the money, should we do it because of the location. There are many different reasons why people want to take a... And the last thing I ever did was for more money. So therefore, how much money you make cannot determine what your next course of action is going to be. You must do it because of the passion you have for that particular job. If you don't have the passion, you can never be successful. So for every job I've done, I've always made sure that I brought that passion and that energy into the job. So that's the other lesson which I think I'd like to share with your reader, that don't do something if you don't want to do it. Don't do it because you're forced to do it. Don't do it because of the constraint. And I think these days, it's become that much simpler. In my time, there were very limited opportunities. You could never really get to do what you wanted to do. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, but I didn't do it for different reasons. Not because I didn't graduate from NDA, but because I had to find something which gave me the opportunity to really become number one in what I did. So I think these days, and I love music. I loved the history. But everybody told me, and I realized that, look, I can't make a decent living being an art student. So that's why I gave the toughest exam of all, which is engineering, became an engineer. But if it was left to myself, perhaps I would have become more of in the non-science stream. So I think these days that opportunity exists. I know so many of my friends whose children have taken a completely different, set of options. And the fact is that you can be very successful in that. The best story I can think of is another friend of mine who was in the Air Force, and he had a younger son who he says he doesn't do anything. Doesn't spend time in school. All he does is tinkers around with motorcycles. And this guy was really very good at what he did. He could take a old motorcycle and he could zap it up and make it look absolutely great. And then one day, his son was traveling back in a flight from Chennai, and he started talking to the person next to him. And the guy turned out to be the chief engineer of Royal Enfield. And they were talking about motorcycles. At the end of the trip, the guy offered him a job. And that guy became a designer in Enfield. So, if you are passionate about what you do, you really show the interest, you can get those kinds of opportunities. I mean, in my time, nobody ever designed products in India. We just adapted them. So I think those opportunities exist. But if you're not passionate, you shouldn't really go. And this is, really essential in today's era, because if you think about the Gen Z, the Gen Z, for them, work and play are together. So if they're not passionate about what they want to do, they will not do it. And for them, the two merge together, because when they're happy with what they do, it's not job anymore. It's, as far as they're concerned, it's all play. So I think it's
you
critical.
Working, would you say that it was work? And would you say that sometimes you felt like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Why am I not a fighter pilot? Did you have those moments in your career?
So I may have, but it didn't deter me. I mean, those ambitions and dreams which you always have every time you see a Top Gun movie, you say, I could have been something like that. No, but I think, our generation was different. Our generation was just after World War II, after independence, and the economy was completely different. Our generation, we worked because we had to live. There was no other way in which you could manage. There were none of these other opportunities. So you became an accountant, a professor, a lawyer, or an engineer, or you joined the government, or you joined the armed forces. They were very limited. but we worked because we wanted to live, and we worked very hard. So that's the third part I thought I'd give as an advice to everybody, is that people tell you that he's very hardworking. Yes, it's very important to be hardworking. It's not so much how much work you put in, but how diligent you are, how creative you are, what outcomes you give. So it's not a question of how much work you put in, but what the outcome is. So that's very, very critical. And our generation, we worked very hard, very long hours. We planned when we would go on vacation, not Sunday in between. We never took weekends off. The weekends were basically, trying to manage the rest of our lives. So I think, hardworking, but the right kind of hard work is very, very critical.
Very critical. And of course, there were so many people in that time who were working hard. Would you say that, you also found the right opportunities at the right time? Did luck have a role to play? Luck, or what we call serendipity, right? Like getting the right opportunity at the right time. Sometimes, some people say, I'm just working so hard, but I'm not getting those opportunities. Do you think that has a role to play? Did you create those opportunities for yourself, or did some of them come your way?
So if I look back at my life, and I've thought about this, a lot of the changes which I made, like for example, after working for nearly 50% of my life, working with Indian companies, I suddenly moved to digital, which was a multinational. And that was a completely different world. Now, if I hadn't taken that choice of moving from an Indian company to a multinational, I think my whole world life experience would have been limited. And I think that choice I made, and it happened just out of the blue. I mean, it wasn't planned. I remember one of the board members of Digital India. He'd come. I'd known him for a long time. He came home to my house in Delhi, and we had dinner. And he says, "Bhaskar, this is the last time I'm going to ask you, do you want to come and join digital or not?" After he left, I actually spoke to my wife and said, "Would you like to go to Bangalore?" She says, "We'll go wherever you go." I took that decision on the spot. I became the vice president of sales and marketing for digital. And digital at that time was the number one mini computer company. It was number 2 to IBM. So for me, that was a tremendous opportunity, and I took that decision in a flash. Okay, so what you said just now, the opportunity came, I seized it. If that opportunity hadn't come, perhaps I would have continued at HP. So which would have turned out better is difficult to say, but the one I chose, the path I chose, actually made me appreciate the way multinationals conduct business, and especially technology companies. So that's why from digital, I moved to Sun Microsystems, from Sun Microsystems to Microsoft.
Right. And so you've been in technology for so many decades. How do you think technology has changed from when you started up to now? I mean, tremendous change, but most of us, millennials and Gen Zs, we haven't seen that transition. So from when computers first came to India, was adoption a challenge? Were you talking about how do we make people adopt computers? And today we are talking about, artificial intelligence. So that transition has happened. So how do you say it has panned out? And did you expect that technology would be so advanced, 20, 30 years down the line?
No, it's, I had the two advantages. One was I was a very avid reader of science fiction. So even before I went into college, I was always thinking about the future and things like robots and artificial intelligence and traveling beyond the speed of light at warp speed, conquering new planets, space technology, phasers, all of that.
And who is your favorite author?
Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. Communications through satellites. All of that was something which I was very familiar with. Then I went to IIT. And IIT Kanpur, it's a 5-year program, but I spent from the second year onwards, you get onto computers. And I spent a lot of time in the computer data center. Even in those days, you basically wrote your program in punch card machines and then you fed it into the computer, and 24 hours later, you got a printout. But my BTech thesis, I actually programmed the computer to design logical circuits using my program after you fed in the parameters, and then it would plot out the overall circuit diagram on a plotter. Now, this was an interactive computer. That means I was interacting with the computer on a continuous or on a real-time basis, which was not heard of in those days. In those days, the data center was there, you fed in your data, and your output comes out at a later stage. Once you become familiar with technology and computers and how they work, then, you have to keep abreast with technology. And technology has the shelf life of a banana, which means that in 2 days' time, you're obsolete. So you have to constantly keep reading. So when I was in digital, I used to read manuals and go to sleep. When I was in HP, I used to read manuals and go to sleep. You have to continuously build that system of how you're continuously learning, experiencing, and adapting to the new technologies. Now, was I shocked at the pace of technology? I wasn't, because I was in it. Because when you're immersed in it, it just seems natural. But I guess if I was outside and I looked in, I would say, my God, how life has changed. We had mainframe computers when I passed out from IIT. The microprocessor hadn't even been invented. We went in a couple of years, we went into all kinds of different gadgets, fax machines and mobile phones and, what do you call it, the pagers. From a communication perspective, photocopiers and fax machines for office equipment. Then the PC came, and then suddenly, instead of having to go to a very large data center where you could access computing, you had it on your table. So I saw that all. When email came, I first did email in 1996, and that was sitting in my house in Bangalore, using a VAX VMS terminal to send email. That was before even Hotmail was invented, and far before Gmail. So in 1996, on a console this big with a huge keyboard, I was actually typing out, single line messages. But the only people I could communicate with were other people who were connected to the same computer. So times have changed. And then after that, we are now at a stage where we went from single computers to network computers to cloud computing to artificial intelligence, and where we are today. So if you were looking at it from outside, you could have believed that how could it have all happened in one generation?
Exactly. So that is itself such a mind-boggling thing to imagine, that you've actually seen the first computer coming in to now seeing Chat GPT and artificial intelligence, which brings me to my question. What do you think is the future of artificial intelligence?
So at the present moment, the way AI is currently developing, it is an assist to the human being. And it makes you much more productive. I mean, in the last board meeting, Unity Bank board meeting, which I was in, they typically, most banks, they'll send you 300 pages of presentation about 5 days before the actual meeting. And I was able to use Microsoft's Copilot to basically take each presentation and ask Copilot to summarize. And then I was able to interactively ask questions to get better insights into certain areas, including getting data from elsewhere just to make that comparisons. And it saved me so much of time. Otherwise, if you look at 600 pages, go through it all, and then start writing notes, it'll take you at least a month. And to get all of that done. So individual productivity is huge. Communication-wise, it doesn't matter where you are. I was in the Antarctica last. I think it was year before, or last year. Last year I was in Antarctica. I had to make a banking transaction. I'm in the middle of the Antarctica, and I was able to instruct HDFC and actually do a wire transfer for a large sum of money. So you're always there. You're always in communication with people. One thing I regret about my career is that most of my career, there were no mobile phones, no cameras. You had to have these big cameras which you lugged around with you. And obviously for the most memorable moments, there was no photographer to take a picture of you. There was no email, so everything was in paper. So a lot of my career, a lot of my interaction, for example, with somebody like R&T is in black and white photographs, colored photographs, and handwritten notes and handwritten letters. So I cherish those, but that's the part of my life which is not recorded. For the millennials and the Gen Z, every moment of their life is going to be recorded, and they will be able to capture it and recall it at will. So that's a huge difference which technology has made.
But now people are saying that there's too much of recording also happening, and too much of, it takes a toll on mental health, because people only want to show their best selves, or the happier moments.
Sure, there is a plus point and a negative point for all of it. But from my perspective, a lot of my earlier life, till I was about in my mid-30s, there was never a way of recording everything. Yeah.
But coming back to the point about photographs, I did see a photograph of you with the president, the erstwhile president, Mr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Perhaps you would like to share a story of how you met him and what happened there.
So I was working for Sun Microsystems at that time as the head of India when Professor Kalam was the president of India. And our CEO, Scott McNeely, very famous person who founded Sun Microsystem from the Bay Area, he had come down. And I took him to meet the president. And the first thing the president said was, look, it's a great day, a fine day. Let's go out into the Rose Garden. So Rashtrapati Bhavan, his office was just next to the Rose Garden. We went into the Rose Garden. He talked a lot about flowers, roses and stuff. And then we came back to the office. And then he turned to Scott McNeely and says, Mr. McNeely, I have to tell you one thing. So Scott says, what? So he says, your name is outdated. You are Sun Microsystems. We are living in the era of nanotechnology. You should change your name to Sun Nanosystems. So Scott heard that and he says, yes, sir, we'll keep that in mind.
Wow.
But that's the kind of a person he was. He was always bubbling with ideas. And then he says, now let me go over my presentation of what I think, how technology can impact India. And he just whipped out his laptop and he just took us to a whole presentation. And then I meet him again subsequently when we went for the inauguration of their high-performance computing platform in the Center for Microbiology, which was inaugurated by Dr. Abdul Kalam in Hyderabad. And I was, Sun Microsystems had donated the equipment. So he saw me and he called me and he made me sit next to him. And he says, Bhaskar, you remember my words to you? You should be now Sun Nanosystem. I said, sir, we were not able to change the name, but I can tell you, just like this project, we worked with nanospeed to get this project done.
And how much time had passed between him first suggesting it and the second episode? Because he remembered.
A couple of years.
And he remembered. So that's an amazing memory as well.
He was a wonderful gentleman. Wonderful gentleman.
Right. And any other, stories from your career that you would like to share? Perhaps something anecdotal about a colleague or someone who made an impression, or anything else?
No, I've interacted with many people, colleagues, even my seniors, and there are many memories, and the most important thing I think is that you've got to have the humility to understand that you can learn from anybody. In fact, I still do, as a matter of fact, interact with people who have worked for me who were very good at technology. And, they're now CTOs of companies or even product specialists. And I still ask them to explain technology to me in a layman's term, because I can read up as much about it. I can go to YouTube. I can many other ways of getting it. But when you talk to somebody and then you have the opportunity to ask multiple questions, you learn more. So I found that I've learned so much from people at all levels. So for me, interaction with a human being is an opportunity to learn something more. Now, whether it is technology or whether it is something which is more social in nature, that learning is something which has always excited me.
Right.
As far as my mentors or managers are concerned, it's about getting a perspective which you hadn't thought about. And can I talk about Mr. Modi?
Of course.
Okay, so, in Microsoft, I used to get the opportunity to meet Mr. Modi at least once or twice a year. And we used to go with Satya and we used to talk about, all the things, ideas and plans of how we will use these technologies to transform India. And Mr. Modi used to listen patiently, always. And the most important thing, it was not just listening and out. He would ask questions and then he would give you suggestion as to how you can improve it even more. So it was not just a publicity, kind of a meeting. It was actually interactive where both sides got something new from the interaction. So that's who Modi is. He's very inquisitive, very curious, and at the same time, he's also has the opportunity. He's very quick to respond in terms of how you can do things better.
Wow. So there's something to learn basically from all these figures who have become successful because they've become successful for a reason.
Yeah.
So someone for their curiosity, someone for their, someone for remembering the smaller details and, coming up with something interesting.
Well, I'll give you another example of Satya Nadella. I mean, I worked in Microsoft when it was run by Steve Ballmer, and now it became Satya Nadella. And the stark contrast in both the performance of the same company under those two leaderships was something which was like a management education. And how Satya transformed Microsoft so that it's now the number one most valuable company in the world, nearly close to $3 to $4 trillion. So it was amazing. And that is a lesson I learned in the fag end of my career. I still talk about what makes a great successful company, and I use a lot of examples from my fag end of my Microsoft period for that.
So what would you say in 3 words is Mr. Nadella's style of leadership?
So he's a person who has what I call a growth mindset. A growth mindset is that he believes that every human and every individual, if given the right opportunity, can excel at whatever they do. And people should be allowed to make mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and then, they can do much better. So principle of growth mindset is that every human being can grow. Now, it also implies curiosity and being inquisitive. The opposite of a growth mindset is the know-it-all mindset. I know everything. You don't have to tell me anything. My product is the best. You buy it or you don't buy it. But I don't really need to, if you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. A growth mindset is, tell me more about what you're doing. Tell me how you're currently doing it. How would you like to do it 6 months from now? So it's about understanding, learning, empathy. That's what a growth mindset is all about. That is his number one contribution. Now, otherwise, he's also smart. So he decided what choices he'd make in terms of technology, what platforms he would create, the alliances and relationships he would build. So there's many other components to the strategy. But the core was this.
Right.
The second one was values. And again, perhaps since we're talking about careers, within the first 3-4 years of your working experience, you must ask this one question. What is my value system? What do I believe in? And you must stand by that for right through your career. So for me, I've got an acronym. It's called CCIIP. These are the values which have stood by me from the beginning. The first C is courage. The second is collaboration. I stands for integrity. The second I is for innovation. And P is speed, pace. So for me, every company I worked for, they have their set of values. I have my set of values, and I try to match the two together.
And you actually came up with this acronym and you brought it to, you said, this is what I stand for.
Yes.
That's a great evaluation. I think every youngster listening to this today should have their own set of values defined in an acronym that you carry with yourself.
All the time.
That's
And
quite interesting.
you should see if there is a match. If there is no match or there is a very strong mismatch, then that's perhaps is not the company for you.
And so now coming back to the Gen Z and the millennials, I know you interact with quite a few of them, including me. You mentor startups and entrepreneurs. So what do you think is the future of this space of entrepreneurship? Where do you think that's going in your mentorship of youngsters? What do you feel about their work ethic?
Yeah, it's you have to adapt. So even when I was in Microsoft, 2017, I was there. I actually realized that the culture of the people who were joining us was completely different. I mean, not culture, but what they valued, how they perceived things. So I actually got a mentor who was a new intern, not an intern, but a new recruit. And I got a she so that I could understand what employees were thinking about different subjects and topics from her. So as the senior leader in the organization, I would always look at a problem, say this is how we are going to solve it, and assume it was correct. But then I realized I was looking at it from my lens, which is a pretty old lens. And therefore, we wanted the younger people to also throw it.
So the interesting part you mentioned is your mentor was a young intern.
Yes.
And
not an intern, it's a trade.
Okay.
She was it was not an intern, she was a full-fledged employee.
And how did she mentor you?
Just conversations. See, what is mentoring? Mentoring is to identify a specific area or a problem which you have or where you want to discuss, and then you use the other person's experience to flesh it out.
So what did you ask her and how did she answer?
So I would say that, look, this is what I'm hearing. This is what are some of the challenges which we are facing either in the market or internally. And this is what I think we would like to do. What's your views on that?
Okay. And did she tell you something about the next generation that you didn't know perhaps?
Yes, quite a few.
Like lingo or?
No, I don't think it was lingo, but it was their approach to problems. See, if I think about technology, I worry about, I worry about security. I worry about people hacking into it. I worry about how if things go wrong. The new generation, they trust technology, but their fear is, what if it's not there? What happens if we're in a world where the technology is not there? How will I live or play or do anything? While for us, we've always got a little bit of suspicion that, technology is harmful. Technology, people can hack in and use technology wrong. In a bad way. But the current generation don't look at technology that way. Their only fear is, if technology is not there, what do I do? My mobile phone doesn't work, what can I do?
Yeah.
And we've reached that level of dependency. But in my career, we never had that problem. Technology was there or not there, it didn't make a difference. We knew how to get the job done. So that's why values comes in important.
Yeah. But I brought up the lingo part because just before we were rolling, I remember the camera people saying BTS and you were like, what's BTS? But I liked that about you, that you wanted to know immediately, what does this stand for? And then we said behind the scenes. And of course, as you know, Gen Z have their own lingo. So sometimes if you just listen to them, you'll be like, what is this acronym?
Yeah.
What does it stand
for?
No,
acronyms, after you go through 2 days of bank board meetings, and kind of acronyms which are floated around are amazing.
Really? But those are like serious ones.
They're serious ones.
Yeah. Gen Z acronym is like YOLO.
Yeah.
You only live once, which kind of defines the entire ethos to work, right? Like you only live once, so you do what you're passionate about. All right. So, let's close this with any final comments or anything that you want to share with the young people who are listening to you. And perhaps, one of the things is that youngsters often say that, if I don't like something, I don't want to do it and move on, etc. Which is great because now we have so many opportunities and options. But, coming from a place of, as you said, post-World War, we didn't have so many opportunities and we stuck it out. So do you think there is a need to balance this you only live once approach to what you might have done in your career of sticking it out and, the hard work that you needed to put in, be there at difficult moments, perhaps?
So again, I'll quote Ratan Tata. I remember we had a very successful year, and he actually wrote me a letter saying, I want to congratulate you. I've been told by your GM that played a major part in the success of Nelco. So I want to thank you for that. And then he says, I also have some advice for you. There were many things in your life which you will want to do, and there are many things in your life you don't want to do. You have to do both. And I think that is something which has stuck me ever since. And therefore, when I get up in the morning, I think of all the things which I don't want to do, and I do them first.
Wow. That's a brilliant, word of advice, I think, from Mr. Tata to you and now to all of us. Thank you so much, Mr. Pramanik. And I think I'll conclude by telling our viewers that he also happens to be my uncle. So I have the privilege of getting all this advice at other times as well. But you've been such a great mentor to me over the years, and now to the listeners of this podcast. Thank you so much for taking out time. Thank you.
But what I appreciate about you is what we were talking about, that while you may be a lawyer, which is like a prehistoric profession, you have chosen to be a lawyer in your own unique way, and that opportunity exists. So that's, I think, is what is the biggest difference. How work has changed over the years.
Yes.
You can choose the way and the flavor which you want, despite being
a lawyer. So yeah, I remember when I first told you that I'm a legal tech entrepreneur, you were very excited. And you've always wanted to know what we are doing and how we are doing it. And you've always been encouraging. So you think that technology can get into any field and disrupt the same. And I think that's the, way you've always positioned yourself.
But the business idea is more critical than the technology. Technology can do anything. That's why I keep telling CEOs, don't try to figure out what technology to use. Figure out what you want to do. Think about what you can do which nobody else can do. Think about what you can do which your competitors can't do. Think about what you can do today which you couldn't do 6 months ago. Once you figure that out, the technology enablers will make that happen. But if you start going with technology, then it's like a hammer looking for a nail. So you have to be very clear that it's the human, the ideas, the human innovation, which is what should drive technology, not the other way around.
Basically, human intelligence over artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
Super. So thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of Chai Pe Career. And thank you, Mr. Pramanik, for coming on this show. I hope you enjoyed yourself.